Succession is a loaded term, and everybody kind of draws their own conclusions. So let me arbitrarily put this frame around the discussion. The most obvious target for this succession will be the leader of the business, CEO or president, who is over 50 and who has figured out eventually he's going to die. And so either he's going to die in the saddle or he's going to grow somebody else to replace him. The other target for succession is key leaders in lower levels of the business. The logic is the same, but the risk isn't quite as big. And what I'm going to try to focus on here is just some things that I've shared with clients that will help them, hopefully, do the succession better than they expected. One of the big problems with succession is the ego of the leader. You've got to have the ego and the courage to be successful. But the backside of the ego is an unwillingness to admit that anyone else can do what you do, or to think carefully about what the next generation of leadership should be. It sounds easy, and it's not. So the target of this is the person leading the business, typically. And what's underneath this is an unwillingness to admit that the change is going to happen. One of the reasons that business leaders, in my experience, want to sell their businesses is that they think it's a simple path and they will be taken out of their misery because one day somebody will hand them a check and they can go on down the road and live the rest of their life. That's the purchase fairy who doesn't exist. Instead of that, let's talk about things that a business leader can do now in order to help him or her move toward the next stage of their life, and also to enhance the value of their business, because there are hundreds of people relying on them in this business. Their employees, their customers, their suppliers, the rest of their family. So this is not an individual responsibility at all. Succession takes 5 different forms. You know these, but I'll run through them quickly. A sale of the business, an employee stock ownership plan, hiring an outsider to run the business, promoting an insider, an employee, or moving a family into position. In all cases, this is about who is going to end up being the president or CEO, the top leader of the business. And I'll tell you a story of a client who is very successful. She runs a construction business here. It is huge, $50 million business or so. And we were working together on succession. She had identified a wonderful guy to run the business for her. She had an agreement with her husband that in 3 years she would leave and come and play with him. And she said to me, every Friday I take a grandma day and I go away and I see my grandchildren. And when I come back on Monday, nothing has changed. I don't know what in the world is wrong with these people. And I said to her, they're thinking about you. You're in their minds. And they're imagining what you would want them to do, and you're not there to give permission, so they just wait till you come back. That was not a good answer for her, but ultimately we worked through the problem more by helping grow her successor than by convincing her to let go. She ultimately has done that. This separation problem, which I'm just describing, is deep, and most people don't talk about it. If you think about it, most people who are leading businesses who are over 50, different if you're 30 or 35, have been doing this for a number of years. It's wrapped up in their identity. They are wedded to the power of the position in ways that they're not even aware of, even though they can recite all these things. And so there is a complicated emotional calculus tied to this, which is a part of the process. It isn't as simple as building a list of tasks and saying, who are these going to go to? You need to do that. But the real issue is how to help the leader reframe what her life is and where it's going to go. And that sometimes involves a specific therapist. I am not one, to help with that. This is not a trivial problem, not talked about. There are 2 paths for succession in my experience, and these go on simultaneously. Yours meaning the job of the leader. I talked to you about Carol, the founder and president of the client company, she has a path for herself which will be different from the path of her replacement. Yes, her replacement needs to build the skills to handle increasing responsibility, to build a working relationship with her that is effective and can confront problems quickly and deal with them and all that kind of thing. Her path is to find a way to step away and to let go a little bit without letting the whole rig go over the cliff. And it's a very complicated dance. If you imagine yourself in a conference room with the key leaders of a business, and it can be anywhere from 3 to 9 people, it's a very complicated conversation. There are relationships going on all the time among all the people on top of whatever is the problem of the moment. And those relationships need to either be ended or replaced as a part of developing the paths for these two people. And the way to do that, the way I found it doing that, is to identify the need for the two paths and to begin talking about, okay, what are we going to do differently next week? And it is literally one step at a time. It is not a one fell swoop kind of move. Unless the business is sold, and that's not really what I'm talking about here. That's sort of a different game. The leader's role in this, now the you is the leader, changes dramatically. The single most difficult change is to move from making decisions to providing advice and ideas. Sounds easy, but remember, the last vote is always the boss, the one who says yes, who can sign the check. Letting go of that position is in itself very difficult. But even for people who can explain to you why it's important for them to let go, who can tell you how they're going to do it, when the big choices come into the room, all the heads turn and look at the boss, waiting for a nod. And being willing to say, what do you think, sounds easy, is very difficult. And it is the mark of a leader who has moved into the next phase of the succession path. And so the starter position is to say, I'm going to handle and be involved in risk decisions only. Risk means risking the health of the business. Risk means huge investments. Everything else you guys do, let me know what you did. Easy to say, very hard to do. Second, to delegate more, which means when people inevitably show up at the boss's desk, and this happens all the time, whether the door is open or closed, people come in and say, what do you think I should do, boss? The question is, what do you think? And then the boss shuts up, presses lips together, forces the other person to say, well, here's what I think. And well, okay, why don't you talk about that with John? Whatever you and John decide, you go do. Now, I can recite that easily. That's a very difficult change for a leader who is used to giving permission and saying, that's a good idea, you go with that. The job involves more of what and less of how. Here's what I mean by that. What means priorities? What are the most important 2 or 3 things that this organization has got to accomplish in this year and therefore this week? And how do we push everything else to the side so that the key things stay in the middle of the focus? The how to do it is the most difficult change, I should think, for a leader, because leaders usually have operated at lower levels in the business, whether they were founders and the business grew with them or whether they were promoted in. They started out being very interested in the details of how things are to be done. Their job is to grow people who understand the how so that the how can get done without them even knowing about the how. And this is a very difficult and essential skill for a leader who is eventually not going to be there at all. And so the how kind of organization, the how people need to be developed, rewarded, and embraced. There are some tools that are helpful to the person who is trying to mark her own path. One of them is a rubric that I learned when I ran a division at Fred Meyer, which is, this is the old kid and the new kid together, making a list of major responsibilities, what's yours, what's mine, and what's ours together. I know there's a song about that, but that's not where we're going. And the list of what is ours can be gradually parsed so that things gradually move into the yours pile and then move from the mine pile to the yours pile. It helps to spell these out. This is a simple idea, so it's stupid simple, but it's very empowering for people who are struggling to figure out how to manage this move. The second transitional object here, and I'll explain that term in a minute, that is actually a technical psychological term, is a management team, not a staff. Many companies think their management team is their department's heads who meet once a week with a boss and are told what to do. That's a staff. That's not a management team. A management team is typically the department heads and key leaders in the business who meet regularly, usually weekly, who build a budget together, who are accountable to each other, not to the boss, to each other for their individual results, who help each other deliver the results together for the company, and who will stand together and address whatever needs to be addressed in order for the company to be successful. What that means is that the role of the CEO or president then is to provide insight, to provide encouragement, and also to raise her hand when the approach seems more risky than is prudent. Now, as a transitional object, a management team is a marvelous way to move from the old leader to the new leader. And the way you do that is build a management team with the old leader leading that business and leading that group, and then gradually, once the new leader sees how this management team operates, switch. The new leader runs the management team, manages the agenda, which is what are the questions we're going to manage. And that moves the old leader into the position of providing information, but not making decisions. It's very powerful. A transitional object in psychology is the blankie that the little kid carries around. Everybody, I think, remembers that, or the teddy bear. It's one or the other. And that object the kid carries around when the kid has outgrown it, quotes, but that's a way for the kid to feel secure in this new world because it's a remnant of when the kid was little and had mom around all the time to take care of her. It's a real thing. And the management team is a transitional object in this kind of situation. The other necessity, this is sometimes a hard sell, is an outside advisor like us. There are two main roles for an outside advisor. One is to provide inertia. If you meet every week and what'd you do, how are we doing next? That meeting done right will help whoever is the leader or new or old to do what they need to do to take their next steps. The other idea for a consultant, and you all do this, is to observe, I'm seeing this. Is that what you want to be going on? Am I missing something? That the kind of observation which is the outsider without any skin in the game to help people who are in a new place, and that is the recently promoted leader and the legacy leader are both now in a new place. They've never been here in their life. Having someone who is outside, who is theirs, who's on their side, not a board member, not someone demanding performance, but someone who can help them see what they need to see, is a powerful helper as they make this journey. If a leader has decided to bring in a replacement to themselves in the business, that means they're going to hire, and that either means promote from within or hire from outside. It's the same thing. The hiring process should look 5 years into the future. It is not a replacement of the current leader, a mistake many make. The discipline of saying, what is this business going to look like in the future? What's going to matter helps frame the key skills of the leader. Second, it's best to bring in whoever this person is 5 years before they are supposed to ascend to the throne, often not done. But the reason for that is that if they have employees' acceptance, they will be able to move quickly and get done what they need to. If they are brand new, there is an enormous amount of resistance to them just because they're not the old boss. Things are new. There's a trust issue, and it's difficult even for the best to get through that. And the pace of change now is so high that you can't wait 4 years to get everybody comfortable with you when you're already in the chair. Third is you're hiring for leadership skills, not technical skills. You can hire technical skills, but the skill of a leader at the senior level in a business is different from the technical skills at the lower levels. And people who have great technical skills can be lousy leaders. The cliche, of course, is a salesman who fails as a sales manager. Finally, financial reporting and analysis needs to be upgraded for this reason. An owner or leader who has been with the business for, let's say, 10 or 15 years has a whole array of information flows, some formal financial reporting, some talking to the old hands he can trust, some particular small reports. And this array of information helps the leader have a sense of what's really going on or where things aren't working right. Someone who comes into the organization without the 15 years experience relies heavily on good financials and the analysis to know where the focus needs to be. One of the, it's a true story, and something I'm not entirely proud of, but nonetheless, I was president of a truck tank manufacturing and installation company in Kansas City. These were fuel tanks, and we couldn't figure out how to make money. We kept losing. It was not a pretty picture. And finally, the owners of the business, who were a private equity group, brought in forensic accountants, believe it or not, which is awful, just terrible, because every employee assumed that it was aimed at them, that they weren't trusted. It was terrible, and they couldn't find the answer. The answer is embarrassing, and it was this: we did not have good numbers. I was not from the industry. I was unable to figure out by myself that there are two parts to this business. There is the truck and there is the tank and pump. And the business was mounting a tank and pump on a truck. The founder of the business, who sold it to the private equity group, owned 4 truck dealerships. And he did not sell the truck dealerships. He just sold the tank part. The money was made with the trucks, not the tanks. And all of these hotshot accountants had no idea. I didn't either. I'm not that smart. And so my lesson was, if I don't know the industry, I've got to have good numbers, or otherwise I don't have a chance. And that would be true for any other leader as well. And so the question for any leader thinking about a succession is, so what are you going to do now? And that question opens the door to a chance to build a path, to build a series of steps which could make this succession work more successfully. That was 3 times using the word success, in case you're counting.